of the bills of where we are. Representative Helwig, thanks for joining us. Thanks for sticking around. I'm sure you had nothing better to do than to go home, but it's good. Great. And so this is kind of where you know where things are, where things aren't for right now. That is of today. And we will be working 4 bills. And then on Monday, we will have the FFA students. We will have the bill hearing on domesticating raccoons. And I believe working 2 or 3 possible bills. So I expect you all to come back. Okay, thank you. So, So again, if you want to, HB 2255, HB 2064, HB 2095, and HB 2111 will be the ones we'll be working here in just a bit. And then conferees as well. Some of our members will need to leave. And so it's not that your bill isn't important, but you know, I tried my best to not work on a Friday, but the snow day kind of messed us up. So I do apologize for all of you being here, but I don't believe we're the only people still here, correct? I think there's another committee or 2, right? I hope.
Judiciary and Commerce.
Oh, Commerce, okay. Okay, well, very good. Okay. All right, let's get underway. If you're ready, Dana. You want to go in your dongle? There, the other side. Let's open up discussion on House Bill 2255. Kyle, would you give us another quick brief of what this bill entails?
Mr. Chairman, House Bill 2255, it's the Weights and Measures Bill. It would consolidate various sections throughout Chapter 83. That's the chapter on weights and measures. The bill would increase some fees that the Secretary may charge for weights and measures testing services. The bill would also establish brand new requirements for owners and operators of electric vehicle supply equipment used commercially. And also a reminder that the department did have a very small technical amendment for the bill.
And do we have?
I do, if for discussion.
Okay. Okay, committee, what is your pleasure, Representative Neely?
Mr. Chair, I move that we pass out HB 2255, favorable for passage.
Second by Roth. Discussion? Let's bring that technical amendment. Yeah, it's fine.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I'll go ahead since this is just adding back in 2 words. They're already part of existing law. When I was consolidating the statutes in the draft, these 2 words got dropped, but it's part of a list of prohibited actions under the weights and measures laws. And so this current paragraph should say it's unlawful for a person for hire to weigh any vehicle at an attended public scale or issue a scale ticket or other record unless the ticket or record shows the date, time, place of the weighing and the signature of the weigher. So the department wanted to make sure that language was still in there. So this is just applicable to people who are being paid to provide the service, not your neighbor, et cetera.
Do you have a motion to accept the amendment?
I move that we pass the amendment out favorable.
Moved by Neely, seconded by Mosier. Any more discussion? Seeing none, you may close.
I close.
All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We're back to the bill. Any other discussion or amendments on House Bill 2255? Seeing none, Representative Neely,
I close.
you have heard the motion to, you get a little bit more than that, I'm sorry.
Oh.
You want to pass?
I move that we pass out HB 2255 favorable for passage as amended.
Second? By Mosley. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. House Bill 2064.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2064 would remove the current solid waste permit exception for the disposal of solid waste generated by drilling oil and gas wells through the practice of land spreading. And from what was stated from the KCC and Health and Environment, this is a permit that's not currently utilized.
All right, committee, what is their pleasure for this bill? Representative Neely?
Mr. Chair, I move that we pass out HB 2064 favorable for passage.
Moved by Neely, seconded by Shing and Sleep. Singing, sleeping, correct? Close enough on a Friday? Okay. Any more discussion? Oh, it's been that way for a couple of years, Representative Page. This is even a better one. Any other discussion? Representative Neely?
Mr. Chair, I move that we pass out HB 2064 favorable for passage.
You've heard the motion, seconded by Mosley. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. House Bill 2095.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2095 would establish a pump installation contractor license and require additional examination qualification and record-keeping requirements for licensed pump installation contractors and water well contractors.
Committee, what is your pleasure? Representative Neely?
Mr. Chair, I move that we pass HB 2095 favorable for passage.
You've heard the motion by Neely, seconded by Rozier. Any discussion? Representative Blex?
I have an amendment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Do we have that amendment to pass out? Okay. Give you just a minute. We're about half passed out, then not half passed out. It's later tonight probably, but when they're half the committee has it. I blame it on slinging sheep. There, I say that's better. If I say it slow and low, I get it. Thank you.
I got one.
Okay, Representative Blex, if you want to explain your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try. We got this pretty late, but basically what this would do would kind of clear up some language that anybody that installs, repairs, or maintains a pump or constructs or reconstructs, plugs, or treat would be considered a water well contractor and be subject to those provisions. It's on line or page 2, and the meat of it's on page 3. And then the rest of it is just kind of clean up language throughout the rest of the bill. And this would clarify a little bit that anybody, if you're dealing with water, whether you're repairing it, drilling a well, working on a pump, you'd be covered.
Okay, you move your amendment?
Yes, I move my amendment.
Second by Minix. Discussion. What does this mean? Does this mean more anybody that deals as a driller or as a pump installer would need to be licensed? Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr. Chair. And if they're coming in and repairing, doing that, they would be, other than some of the domestic well exceptions.
Okay. Do you know what this means for the fiscal note as far as additional fees? Did we get that far?
I'm sorry, I do not. It come late.
That's fine. Any other enlightenment, Mr. Hamilton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. From what I understand, the main thrust of this amendment is to make sure that anyone who is a well contractor or pump installer is submitting required records. I think that's on page, like the bottom of page 8, the beginning, that's at section 9. Those requirements, they would have to follow them even if they weren't licensed. But as Representative Bleck said, the definitions of an installer and inspector exempts those domestic individuals.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Representative Fairchild? Okay, that's fine. And be sure to swing your mic around, too. We can hear you. Anything else in the amendment? Seeing none, Representative Bleck, you may close.
Mr. Chairman, I move my amendment.
You've heard the motion, seconded by Minix. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Amendment is accepted. We're back on the bill. Representative Fairchild.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I feel like the proponents of the bill did a good job of explaining it and made a good case for the bill, and I do think that there probably should be some additional government oversight of these pump installation contractors, but my concern is just that occupational licensing in general has just proliferated over the years. It's continued to increase pretty significantly over the past 20 or 30 years, and so, and I just feel like we should generally reduce some of the occupational licensing requirements that we have in our state and in our country, and so I'm just hesitant to want to add an additional occupational licensing requirements, even though I understand the argument for it, and I think that the proponents of the bill did a good job, but I'm hesitant to want to add more of these requirements.
Okay. Other Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm a guest here, and so I didn't hear all the testimony, but I would tend to agree with the former representative's comments. I'm not one to add more licensing for. To me, sometimes this becomes a protectionism of certain industries. So, but I guess it's the will of the committee.
Thank you. Representative, I'll get it. You're still a freshman. Give me a break. Weigel, yeah.
Michael like Michael.
Yes, Weigel. There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's important that the committee remember that this was brought forward by the industry that's asking for the licensure, and they noted how unusual that is. And given the discussion around potential contamination of well water, I certainly stand in support of this bill.
All right, Representative Featherston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with the former representative. It was pointed out the people bringing the bill would make no more money through these licenses being required, and the repercussions of poor installation, maintenance, et cetera, were everything from contaminating your own water to a catastrophe of contaminating everybody's water with no means to fix it. So if we're going to protect something, I would like my water protected.
Other comments on the bill? Representative Rozier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to bring up the fiscal note from this that was brought up. It doesn't, it would increase our fee revenue. Not a lot, it's a drop in the bucket, and we are to be good stewards of the state budget. But I did want to point that out, that no reasonable person in their field would ask for further restrictions on or impose on their ability to do their job. So the willingness to come and testify, even in these conditions where they are very needed out in their field, and to come to the State House and wait for us for that very, very long committee meeting that we had, and then as well as seeing the fiscal note, for that I say yes.
All right, other questions on the bill? Comments? I believe, are we not in another committee looking at occupational licensing anyway as a overview? Maybe I'm mistaken. I know there's been some discussion of looking at all that. The concern that Representative Fairchild has in maybe a global type look at that, but maybe that was hall talk too, I don't know. Any other comments? Seeing none. Representative Neely.
Mr. Chair, I move that we pass out HB 2095, favorable for passage as amended.
Very good. Seconded by Rozier. Yeah, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Post same sign. Motion carries. Now, House Bill 2111, sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 2111 would amend the current statutory conservation reserve enhancement program in the following ways. The acreage cap for CREPs would be increased from 40,000 to 60,000 acres with the possibility of approving the last eligible offer that exceeds this cap. The limitation on acres eligible based on expired federal contracts would be removed. Subject to USDA approval, CREP contracts would be allowed for dryland farming or limited irrigation to meet water quantity goals. The prohibition on participation in CREP for government-owned water rights would be stricken. Current CREP criteria related to water right usage, sanctions, and reporting would be clarified. And then reporting requirements would be modified to cover the preceding 5 years.
Committee, what was your pleasure moving forward? Representative Neely?
Mr. Chair, I move that we pass out HB 2111, favorable for passage.
Seconded by White? Oh, Mosier, sorry. Thought you were pointing. All right. Yes, there we go. Questions or comments on the bill? Representative Minix?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment.
Okay. We'll pass that out. Thank you. And as you explain your amendment, I think in forward, we just kind of make sure we know where it is, if it's on the second page or what, an easy way to find that. So just a bit here. Everybody have it? All right, Mr. Dr. I might give you a big promotion. Representative Minix. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Governor. The amendment's all on the second page, and basically it would allow the addition of the main paragraph there after striking one line to no more than 1,600 acres enrolled in CREP in one county. And a few more words there. Basically, we're trying to allow for CREP to go into some areas such as Kearney County might be the one with the most enrolled acres at this time, and yet we don't believe they will exceed the single county. We're trying to address some of the concerns that were expressed when we heard on this bill earlier. It might actually improve things in the Rattlesnake Creek area. It gives us the opportunity to have more people enroll in CREP in that area, which will help us tremendously in some other issues that we have in that area going into Quivira.
Any questions? Seeing none, Representative Blacks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think, I support CREP. It's been one area that we've been able to target and reduce some water use, and it's been fairly popular in the area as I understand it. And I guess and maybe the carrier of the amendment might answer this, are we having any problems with county commissioners on reduction of tax revenue within any one county, or is that your reason for a cap? Or
Well, there's always a concern of that, and we saw that happen early days of CRP in some counties, and that's why we're trying to fashion this in a manner that it can be strategically placed and not adversely affect the local economies, and yet help us in areas that have the most delicate water areas.
Thank you for that explanation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other questions? Yes, Representative Featherston?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Minix, do you see this as any kind of infringement on property rights?
As far as property rights, no. These are all voluntary programs. If someone wants to enroll acres into it and accept the compensation for what they're doing, that's entirely their choice. Actually, it in my way, strengthens property rights. It allows you to enroll into some of these programs to do what you want to do with your land. I don't see it as imposition at all.
I have one more.
Go ahead.
I think my question is, will this prevent any producers that want to voluntarily join the program from joining the program?
If the entire area exceeded the cap limits that we've established here, it might possibly, but I really don't anticipate that happening. If anything, we want to expand this CREP program to protect some of our water resources out there. And the people that want to do it, based upon the sign up that we've had so far, we anticipate a little bit increase in that, but not a great deal. But anything helps.
Thank you.
Okay. Questions or comments? Representative, you may move your amendment. We forgot to do that. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I move my amendment on House Bill 2111.
Do I hear a second? Seconded by Blex. We've had the discussion. We'll get back on track. All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Amendment is added. Back on the bill. Any other questions or comments on the bill? Seeing none, Representative Neely.
Mr. Chair, I move that we pass out HB 2111, favorable for passage.
You have.
As amended.
Yes. Okay. All those in favor, or second, I'm sorry, seconded by Roth. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. House Bill 2011 is passed out favorably. We know we have some members that need to go. I just want, if you take your sheet with you and you want to know if it looks like it's not moving, we're going to keep it here so it may not, so it doesn't get lost, or killed if it doesn't go above the floor. You know, if it's below the line. So that's why. And so we'll talk more about that after turnaround. But we'll, again, see you on Monday then. Thank you so much. Okay. Those four bills then will go up to hopefully be on the House floor. Let's move on now to the hearing on House Bill 2114. That is authorizing the chief engineer to adopt rules and regs under the Watershed District Act concerning fees and the inspection of dams. So, Kyle, if you would please describe this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Under current law, it's required for written consent or a permit from the chief engineer for constructing, modifying, or adding to any dam or water obstruction, or changing the course, current, or cross-section of a stream. Certain water obstructions are exempt from needing a permit if the obstruction falls within certain criteria. So Section 1 of this bill would add a new subsection E that would state that any structure that would otherwise fall under the definition of dam shall be considered a water obstruction if its primary purpose is to serve as 1, a dry detention road fill for state, county, or municipal government, or 2, it would serve as a low head dam that has a maximum height below the lowest stream bank. Section 2 of the bill concerns application fees. The bill would increase application fees for permits to construct, modify, or add to a dam, with fees varying by hazard class. The bill would also add a new post-construction permit fee for water obstructions that is in addition to the current permit application fee. Section 3 of the bill concerns inspections and compliance. Under current law, the chief engineer or an authorized representative of the chief engineer is authorized to inspect dams or water obstructions. The bill would clarify that the term authorized representative can include a licensed professional engineer approved by the chief engineer. So essentially an approved third party. Language would also be amended to clarify that owners paying for inspection services must pay the department directly, even when the inspection was performed by a contractor approved by the chief engineer. Concerning penalties, in addition to the law's current penalties, a new civil penalty would be added ranging from $100 to $1,000 per violation. The bill would remit civil penalty amounts to the Water Structures Fund. House Bill 2114 would become effective upon publication in the statute book. With that, I'd be happy to take any preliminary questions.
Any questions for Kyle? Seeing none, thank you. Heather, what about a fiscal note?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Department of Agriculture estimates that an additional 2 licensed engineer positions would be required for annual total expenditures of about $250,000. The agency estimates that the revised fee structure would generate approximately $255,000 in new revenue, which would provide sufficient funding for inspections and enforcement of the rules and regulations under the Obstructions in Streams Act. The department anticipates similar expenditures in fiscal year 2027. The Office of Judicial Administration indicates enactment of the bill could increase the number of cases filed in courts. Enactment of the bill could result in the collection of docket fees and cases. However, a fiscal effect cannot be determined. And the Kansas Water Office indicates the bill would not have a fiscal effect on agency operations.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for Heather? Seeing none, we will start now with testimony. First up, in the proponent's side will be Kelsey Olson from the Department of Agriculture. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to provide testimony on House Bill 2114. This bill, as mentioned by the reviser, does propose statutory changes to the Stream Obstruction Act. The Kansas Department of Agriculture and the Division of Water Resources is charged with protecting property and public safety when it comes to maintaining the inventory of the dams in the state of Kansas. In 2024, the national inventory of dams accounted for 6,490 dams in the state. Of those, 2,531 are state regulated. 328 of them are high hazard, 176 are significant hazard, and the remaining are considered low hazard. It is our responsibility to ensure that the integrity of these regulated structures is maintained and so that the infrastructure and assets below the dam are preserved and public safety is maintained. In 2022, the Kansas Legislature authorized an independent third-party study of the dam safety program in the Division of Water Resources. That study compared our program to other state programs, industry standards, and what the model dam safety manual is, what other states are compared to. It was based on those recommendations. They provided a list of recommendations to the agency that we were found to be inefficient or ineffective or underserving our regulatory responsibilities in regards to dams. So based on those recommendations, we've brought forward this bill before you today. It does not include all of them, but we felt that these were the ones that allowed us to maintain the integrity of our program, but would also provide public safety to the state at an appropriate level. Kyle did a great job of outlining them. I just want to talk about a couple of the key components to that. So the first one to bring your attention to is agency-based inspections. Currently, a dam owner is responsible for providing their own inspection and providing that inspection report to the agency. However, the recommendation from the consultant was that we bring those inspections back in under the state program and have state oversight on those. Currently, the inspection frequency for high hazard or Class C structures is once every 3 years. Class B or significant hazards are 5 years, and our low hazard potential dams do not require any type of routine inspection report. We are asking, one of the key changes in addition to having the agency inspection is bringing those low hazard inspections to a once in every 10-year frequency. Really the thought here is that the importance of these, the hazard class is based on what is below downstream, and the importance of ensuring, it's hard to ensure the integrity of the dam is safe unless they are inspected to some degree. Right now, we suffer from people who may not be aware of the fact that they're required to submit inspection reports, and sometimes the quality of those inspection reports are lacking or are missing some of the marks, are not succinct as complete as they should be. And that brings me to the next point I wanted to point out is the civil penalty authority. Currently, if it is the only way that we can do anything for anyone who's not completing these reports on time or in the correct manner is to go to district court. This can be very costly and, of course, timely. It's not a very time-effective process for the agency or the structure owner. So we are requesting civil penalty authority to be able to pursue penalties for any non-compliance of those who are not following the requirements outlined for their structures. Between both the compliance component and having that face-to-face conversation, as well as the conversation of the inspection report or the frequency of the inspections, we feel that we do not currently have, we have not been able to build regular relationships with our structure owners across the state. By having the ability to inspect them and go and talk to them, we believe that we could gain some trust and build some relationships there that would allow for better communication. People would know who our team are, and we would not be, short to say, a scary entity out here that's trying to regulate our structures. There is a proposal in 2114 to increase application fees. The fees were last set and went into effect in 2013. We are asking for an increase of this fee. These fees do not currently bring in enough revenue to support the program. And for those of you who this isn't your first term, we have come to the legislature and asked for additional SGF for a couple years now to support the dam safety program because we do not have sufficient fee-funded programs, fees generated. So the new fees, while they are a large increase, are in line with other states and what was a recommended level that came from the consultants. Lastly, the last thing I want to point out is there is an exemption for a road dry filled detention exemption. And if you're like me, I had to ask a couple times to make sure that I understood this. And the most simple term that I can tell you is sometimes when roads are built, they inadvertently become a dam given the topography of the landscape on either side. By allowing this exemption, currently we provide waivers, but this language would provide an exemption to our municipal owners, county owners, and state owners in cases where roads become dams inadvertently. So we are waivering them now, but this would allow us to work a little bit more efficiently in certain cases. Overall, our goal is to provide public safety and reduce risks of life by making enhancements to our water structures program. We appreciate your work, your hearing this bill, and the opportunity to speak before you. I do know that there may be some amendments that are brought forward from the Kansas Livestock Association. We've talked with them, and we believe most of those would be considered friendly amendments, and we would be open to that dialogue if you guys were interested in making said amendments. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your time and stand for any questions.
Kelsey, thank you. Questions? Representative Schlangen-Siepen?
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have a friend who has a 20-acre pond and a significant dam that was put there by the Army Corps of Engineers. So is that currently being inspected? Do you know? I mean, in other words, how much water has to be behind an obstruction before a dam's a dam? I think I just heard you say not much. But I'm just curious. So what does this mean? I mean, first of all, are you aware of every dam that exists in the state? And is everyone who has a dam on their property aware that they need to have inspections? And I'm totally ignorant here, so I'm just asking this question out of curiosity.
I appreciate the question, Representative, and I'll do my best to answer it, but if it gets too technical, I do have our program manager with me, and I might defer to him. But if it's a Corps of Engineer dam, those are going to be maintained and inspected by the Corps of Engineers. Okay. We would be aware of that entity, but it would fall under the purview of the Corps. Okay. As for the size of the structures, some of that is found in language now. It is somewhat, I don't know, there is language in statute that causes us concern or problems. And if you have the bill in front of you, on the first page, in the definition of the dam provides that it's a height of 25 feet or more, with a height of 6 feet or greater, and a storage volume of, at the top, of emergency capacity of 50 acre feet or more. The definition of what's a regulated dam is found on page 3 of the bill, has a height of 30 feet or more in storage acre and less than 125 acre feet. And that was an exemption that the legislature put in previously, and did exempt a number of dams from our purview. There'll be some testimony, I think, on another bill that will go into that a little bit more in depth, but hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Blex?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Kelsey, for being here. I have a lot of watershed dams in my area. I get quite a few complaints about the inspection fees, and some of that, I understand, you know, earth and compaction built years ago is not the best, but give me your number of high hazard dams and I'll give you another example of if it would be a high hazard dam.
So you're wanting to know what high hazard, so
yeah, kind of define high hazard, what's that classification, how you guys arrive at that?
Sure, so I believe that's a standard definition for most water structures in the country, but that definition means that there are either inhabited structures below stream, houses, or, you know, of the like. That would also include semi-regular, like, it doesn't have to be every night that someone's staying there. Could be recreational area that people would be camping at, or also critical assets. So we're talking about high flow traffic areas, or, you know, maybe there's utility lines downstream that would be potentially impacted by flooding, but there has to be a critical asset or potential for loss of life.
Thank you for that. I apologize for baiting you into that. Mr. Chair might have another. And here's a problem that is really common, is you have an attractive area and somebody comes in and builds a $500,000 house directly below a dam, and that automatically triggers it to be high hazard when the structure of the dam and the actual compaction has met specs and everything else is fine. And I get people, the watershed district managers, grousing about that because now they're having to cough up a higher inspection fee. And I think we went through this, what, about 3 years ago? My position hadn't changed a whole lot, but, you know, this does cause a problem when, you know, when the dam is fine and yet somebody comes in and builds a structure that we have absolutely no control over, or maybe a neat little picnic area that would automatically trigger that high hazard dam. And I guess we probably need to somehow get those out from under there. I mean, if I build a house in a floodplain, that should be my problem, you know. Thank you, Mr.
May I provide
ahead.
remarks?
Go ahead.
So I don't feel baited. I appreciate your comments, but I don't feel baited into that conversation. We have given a lot of thought about that. I think there is an amendment that another conferee will address that would look at if there is change in the class structure because of not the structure's owner, that the agency, the language would address that the agency would assume that responsibility for inspecting it at that higher frequency, because no part of the owner the owner built it in good faith knowing that it would be a lower class hazard, and then it changed because of something that they couldn't control.
Representative Hoffman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the previous representative asked kind of what I was going to talk about, because that happens quite a bit. And I guess I'm not sure why the agency should have to pay for that dam to be inspected. I think that the person that built the house or built the structure within that area should be the one that has to pay for that. I mean, I don't want the taxpayers to have to pay for a dam to be inspected because somebody built a house somewhere where they really should have known better. And if they don't, then they can pay for the inspection. So I think it's something that needs to be looked at. It's definitely something that has been an issue for several years. I wanted to ask, does this change in any way what was done several years ago in making more dams, bringing more dams back under inspection, except for the 10-year deal?
Certainly, Mr. Representative, it does not. I know a previous version of the bill that we had looked at did, but we stepped away from that change and are leaving that exemption in there.
So mostly it's increasing the fees and then adding in the dry detention road fill? That's mostly what the bill's doing?
In addition to the state agency inspections, as opposed to it being pursued on their own.
And another, that always bugs me. I used to run a gas station. It just bugged me that I couldn't hire someone to come out, inspect my pumps, fix them if they need to be fixed, and certify that they were fine. I had to have a state inspector come out, look at them, saying, oh, something needs to be fixed. I'd have to then hire someone to come out, look at them, fix them, and then the state would have to come back and look at them again. So I'm not sure why we need to bring if the state can certify that private companies are certifying, I'm not sure why we need to bring them back under. So thank you.
So if I could, the idea is agency-based inspections, but it would be semi-privatized, because there is a language in there that would allow for certified professional engineers to also conduct the inspections. But we would ask that the agency help identify those that would be certified, and that would flow through us so that we can ensure those reports are sufficient and thorough to the appropriate degree.
Okay.
So you don't have authority right now of who inspects?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
All right. Representative Blex for a second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I thought about leaving, but counting black cows at 7 o'clock isn't any different than 8 o'clock. You still can't count them. So I'm here.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Yeah. Do you have any instances where you've taken a high hazard dam and with some repairs and changed that classification? And I'm thinking years ago of an old corrugated pipe in a state lake that had some corrosion and piping, and we come in and put a fiberglass sock in it and totally changed that. If it's high hazard once, can it ever get non-high hazard?
Well, I'm going to say no, because it's based on the size of the structure and how much water it's controlling and what's below downstream. But let me turn to my expert. Terry, come on up. Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Coming up, and then just your name for the record, please.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm Terry Medley. I'm with the Kansas Department of Agriculture, Division of Water Resources. And yes, there are multiple occasions where it goes from a high to a significant or a low hazard, but not based on the storage, based on the fact that they've removed whatever hazard it is downstream or the road traffic lowers, and so we can change those hazard classifications back.
You probably haven't bulldozed too many $600,000 houses below, I assume.
No, but there are situations where houses get abandoned and things like that.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other questions? Representative Featherston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How far away can a house be from a dam and trigger this high hazard? Like, or conversely, how much area is blocked off, in theory, because of this dam?
If I may, I will gladly defer to Terry again.
Go ahead.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. There's no set distance. What we do is inundation maps. So we do the hydraulics and the hydrology to show where this inundation wave goes. And so it could dissipate everything back into the channel within a mile, or it could be 10 miles downstream. It just is so dependent on topography and the hydrology and the land cover and everything else. So there's no real good answer for you to say that it has to be within 4 miles or anything like that. It's all dependent on the structure.
Go ahead.
And are builders aware of this when they put a house in, that they're in the zone?
Some counties do have zoning policies on it, but they're not widely enforced.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Seeing none, thank you. Appreciate it. Written only proponent is Lori Spragan, Associate of State Dam Safety Officials. Anyone else wish to be a proponent? Seeing none, we'll go to opponents. Up first, Aaron Popalka from the Kansas Livestock Association. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Pleasure to be with you for the second day in a row. We're appearing today, again, Aaron Popelka with the Kansas Livestock Association. We're appearing as an opponent, but before I get into some of our concerns, I do want to thank the department for working with the regulated entity to try and narrow this bill down. And I want to especially call out a couple things that we appreciate them keeping in. One would be the exceptions in subsection D, one of which includes wastewater structures for confined feeding facilities, because those already receive a permit and engineering review from KDHE, and we want to make sure we don't have double permitting, and they've kept that, so we appreciate that. The other thing we appreciate is if you notice on the inspections, while they set a fee, if the chief or the employees of the department do the inspections, they allow certain approved professional engineers to do the inspections without a fee. And this really came about in some discussions we had with the department, saying, hey, we know some engineers. KLA has KLA Environmental Services as a subsidiary. We have engineers, and our engineers, depending on the size of the dam and the circumstances, in some cases can do it cheaper than the fees that are being set here. So they're in the bill giving the option that if you choose to have these type of engineers do it, you don't have to pay the fee. So we appreciate that. Now I think I'm going to get into some of the concerns. As an association, we represent members all across the state from east to west, and the east issues are a little bit different than the west issues. In the west, we have bigger expanses of land, probably more contiguous ownership, where in the east, smaller tracts and more population, so each with significant issues. And I've outlined some of the issues that we typically see, one being we think that if looking at those inundation maps and a dam fails, and the only property affected is the property of the dam owner, it doesn't make a lot of sense to have to require inspection fees at that point. You're just harming yourself. I don't know if that happens a lot. Tend to happen more in the west than in the east. Again, less people, larger contiguous pieces of property. The other, which has already been discussed by Representative Blex and Representative Hoffman, is are those instances where I put in a dam, it is low hazard, and then folks build those $500,000 houses, or, well, quite frankly, it could be a $20,000 house. It still triggers the same hazard class change. Those have been an issue. In addition, was mentioned the inundation maps. Those aren't readily accessible and easy to view for whether contractor property owners. So how do we get those more out to the public? In addition, right now under the bill, the department can simply enter your property without notice. That could cause some issues. Our members think there ought to be at least some minimal notice, written notice. The other couple issues, and I'll get into some of the amendments I think that address these issues, have to do with the penalty provisions. Understand that why the department wants a civil liability piece. For those of you who've been here a few years, you might remember a few years back we had an animal health bill where they wanted this authority. Our folks said, okay, we understand that. We're probably okay with it, but if that's the case, and this is really a regulatory permitting regime, we probably shouldn't really have criminal liability still attached to it. And so our suggestion is that in the criminal piece, we insert the word intentionally, so that you're not gonna get rung up for a misdemeanor unless you really knew about the infraction and meant to cause that sort of harm. In addition, it probably, while I trust this chief engineer and then and Mr. Medley and folks there, we don't know what the future brings. It's usually not a good idea to have civil penalties self-fund the agency. We get into tight budgets, that could cause some interesting interactions when you have an inspection. We would recommend those be instead put into the state general fund to avoid those type of instances. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I might go to our attached amendments. There are 6 that we kind of organized by topic. The first essentially says the first thing I talked about. Again, if a failure only affects your property, fixtures on your property, no inspection requirements or fees, inspection fees. The other gets at the issue of someone building homes in this inundation area after I have a low hazard dam. I understand what Representative Hoffman's saying about, well, why is the state on the hook for it? And as we've thought about it, the only real way to get at that is to like create a taxing district. It gets really complicated. So for us, as we're thinking through it, maybe the easier way to do this is say, if I have a low hazard and under this bill, I'd have to have an inspection once every 10 years, houses get built, and that moves me to the 1 in 3 category, then the department makes up the extra, I guess it'd be 2 inspections, and doesn't charge a fee for those. So we're getting charged the 1 time in 10-year fee, but we're not on the hook for the rest. The other is notice. We have 30 days prior written notice. If that's too long, we're willing to talk about something shorter, but just something to give the owner some notice, like, hey, there's going to be some strangers showing up to walk around your property. I think that would avoid some bad circumstances on both sides. The other is that the department publish those inundation maps and make it publicly available in a readable format on their website so that contractors, landowners can see them. I understand there may be some costs with that there could be some difficulties around that. We think that'd be a good idea. Finally, if you go to the back side, there's language essentially in the civil penalties to reroute those to the state general fund, and then again, insert the word intentionally in the criminal liability section. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that's our testimony, and happy to stand for questions.
All right, thanks, Aaron. Any questions for Mr. Papelka? Representative Hoffman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not sure. So why does there have to be any criminal section in there? Why can't it just be a civil?
I was trying to thread the needle, but I think if you just repealed the criminal piece, that'd be okay by us too.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
And again, those amendments are on, we have them online, correct? Yes. Okay. Anyone else testifying as an opponent? Seeing none, as a neutral position, we have Travis Lowe from the Kansas Society of Professional Engineers. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, my name is Travis Lowe from the Braden Heiner Lowe & Associates firm, here today representing the Kansas Society of Professional Engineers. For over 120 years, licensed professional engineers have played a critical role in dam engineering and conservation efforts and ensure a sustainable water environment infrastructure safety. On behalf of the Kansas Society of Professional Engineers, we'd like to thank you to offer our thoughts as it pertains to the safety measures for the state's hazard class dams. This relates to page 4 and 5 of the bill, and admittingly will not weigh in on the philosophy of dam responsibility that's previously been discussed. The purpose of our testimony is to clarify language to ensure that the department staff or an outsourced representative or anyone else in the options have been provided in the bill who perform the inspections for Class B or C hazard class dams remain licensed professional engineers. We want to begin by thanking the Department of Agriculture staff, in particular Chief Engineer Earl Lewis and his team, for the dialogue on this subject that dates back to their bill, House Bill 2526, during the 2024 session. Under current law, and this is shown on page 5 of the bill, high hazard dams require a safety inspection by a licensed professional engineer every 3 years, while significant hazard dams require one every 5 years. House Bill 2114, as currently written, we believe lacks that explicit language requiring dam inspections be conducted by a PE in all scenarios, leaving open the possibility of individuals who might not be a licensed professional engineer in some of those scenarios. Page 3 on the bill, or section 3 of the bill, which begins on page 4, outlines scenarios where the chief engineer or their appointed representative or the private sector, it says including a licensed professional engineer, it doesn't say shall be a licensed professional engineer. And also on page 5, it strikes that current law we referenced earlier, mandating that a licensed professional engineer do those inspections in those scenarios every 3 or 5 years respectively with that other language. So our concern is including instead of shall. We just like to make sure that's a clear mandate. So for someone like me who is not a licensed professional engineer and not qualified to provide those inspections. If the committee does consider advancing the bill, we'd respectfully ask for a note in section 3 that just says all inspectors of high hazard class or significant hazard class dams be a licensed professional engineer qualified in the design, construction, maintenance, and operation of dams. And that language comes from the current law. The precedent for the role of qualified licensed professional engineers is well rooted in Kansas statute and our neighboring states, and in the Model Dam Safety Program Manual as recommended by the Department of Homeland Security and the Association of State Dam Officials. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I will stand for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Lowe? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else wishing to testify as a neutral? Seeing none, we will close the hearing on House Bill 2114. Now we'll open the hearing on House Bill 2153, specifying when boards of directors of irrigation districts 35,000 or more may conduct board member elections by mail ballot, establishing the terms and so on is the beginning structure of that bill. So, Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the first section of this bill is going to concern irrigation districts and their elections. And the second section is going to touch on water structures. So there'll be a little bit of overlap in with the previous topic from the previous bill we were just discussing. So in section 1, under current law, a majority of qualified owners of irrigable lands owning at least 60 acres collectively are allowed to petition for the organization of an irrigation district. Upon approval by the chief engineer, an irrigation district has perpetual existence and powers similar to other public corporations, including eminent domain and tax levies. The district's board of directors consists of 3 members elected for terms of 2 years or 4 years. Elections are conducted according to state general election laws with provisions for mail ballots. Voting rights are granted to qualified owners of irrigable land with specific provisions for entities like trusts and corporations. So the bill would allow for 3-year terms for those district board of director members, in addition to 2- and 4-year terms. Additionally, when elections of board members are held by mail ballot, the board of directors would be required to establish the terms of such members to be a period of 2, 3, or 4 years. Then moving on to section 2, dealing with the water structures, the bill would amend the definition of dam to create different criteria for dams used for agriculture or non-agriculture uses. A water structure for agriculture use would not be considered a dam if it is under 30 feet high or has a height of less than 6 feet and a storage volume at the top of the emergency spillway elevation of less than 125 acre feet. Additionally, any structure that would otherwise be considered a dam would be considered a water obstruction if the primary purpose of the structure is to serve as a dry detention, road fill for state, county, or municipal government, or a low head dam that has a maximum height below the lowest stream bank. So you'll recognize that provision from the previous bill we were discussing. Section 3 concerning penalties. In addition to current water structure penalties, a new civil penalty would be added ranging from $100 to $500 per violation. In the previous bill we were talking about, it was from $100 to $1,000 per violation. In this bill, it's up to $500 per violation. The bill would remit civil penalty amounts to the Water Structures Fund. The bill would become effective upon publication in the statute book. With that, I'd be happy to take any preliminary questions.
Questions for Mr. Hamilton? Seeing none, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, Representative Mosley?
How many water districts will this impact? I can ask the proponents.
Right, I believe there's only one at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Seeing none, Heather? Fiscal note?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Department of Agriculture and the Kansas Water Office indicate the bill would have no fiscal effect on the agencies. The Kansas Association of Counties indicates that enactment of the bill could create some cost savings for counties from the utilization of mail ballots as opposed to in-person voting. However, precise fiscal effect could not be estimated.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Heather? Seeing none, we will open with proponent testimony. Up first is Representative Scott Hill. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Chairman Rogers, members of the committee. It's a pleasure to be in front of the Agriculture Committee. I'm impressed that on a Friday afternoon, there's still this many people here, and in particularly a Friday afternoon when you should be thinking about going out to dinner with your sweetheart. I introduced this bill with the anticipation that the Division of Water would introduce a bill to change some definitions of dams. That's dam with an M. We are concerned about unintended consequences. And when we get elected to come up here, we don't ever think about making people's lives more difficult or putting people out of business through financial penalties. We have a significant number of irrigators in the eastern third of Kansas that irrigate out of structures that contain runoff water. And we probably should have labeled those structures irrigation instead of agriculture structures in this bill. They really resemble those roads that we're talking about that contain water much more closely than the average dam that the division is very interested in, and for good reason, is interested in protecting the safety of people. But what we would like to see in this bill, and we're certainly open to amendment into the previous bill, but what we would like to see is that those structures that are designed for irrigation and meet the same size category as those dry roadbed, whatever those things are called, would actually not be considered dams for the inspection, for the classification, for the civil penalties. And that would solve the issue in perpetuity for the irrigators, that they would be able to collect this runoff water, preventing erosion, improving stream quality, and at the same time providing a valuable service to the state of Kansas by providing food, of course, to a hungry world. So I would ask that you would consider this, particularly as you look at the previous bill of the Division of Water trying to get a handle on structures that are out there that actually are hazardous. But you know, I'm thinking about it, and I can't remember hearing that the state is inundated, for lack of a better term, with breaches in irrigation dams. In fact, I don't know of any. And so sometimes I think we are creating a solution in search of a problem. With that, I would thank you for your attention on a Friday afternoon and stand for any questions.
Thank you, Representative Hill. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you again for being in committee. Next to oral proponent, Keith Grimm, MWI LLC, Valley. Welcome to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee. Thanks for the opportunity to come and share. Keith Grimm, own and operate an irrigation company in Northeast Kansas. Work with farmers and growers in the eastern third, really, of Kansas, doing permitting work with the department on a fairly regular basis, and permitting of structures and permitting of water, so know them well. I am want to speak directly probably to page 6 in House Bill 2153. My portion of this here, so this bill originated out of the bill that was introduced last year from the department, 2156, I believe that was, that tried to strike out the exemption that we put in 2012, 2013. I was instrumental in making that happen. So really wanting to protect our growers, our farmers that use this water for irrigation purposes, so that we don't end up in a place where all of a sudden we lose our exemption and we don't have the, and we're left in a spot where we don't know for sure if we're going to be asked to engineer a structure that previously wasn't required to be engineered. And so want to create an exemption, not an exemption, but really an agriculture or an irrigation classification for dams to allow us to build up to that 125 acre feet and up to 30 feet tall and not be concerned with regulation. As the previous Representative Hill mentioned, there's not dam failure issues. These structures are being built to current standards. Structures don't just breach and blow out today. For sure not structures that are being permitted and being looked at in the type of area that we're working in. We're building structures. These are expensive structures. The growers putting in structures that are costing $50,000 to $150,000, and they're investing in that and want that to be there for the long term. There's a lot of positives for economics, for the farmers, for the ranchers, for the people that are using this water, for the state of Kansas. There's sediment collection, there's nutrient collection. The one challenge, that the reason that I would like to see this is that when we introduced this legislation in 2012 and got it through, it really, I'd say for the first 5-8 years went really smoothly. Things went right along like we were hopeful they would. And as time has gone, the department has looked at this exemption that we have, and they've said, are we really qualified? Do we have the people on staff to be able to say these are truly all low hazard? And they've really put some of that weight back on us as we file permits. And so then we're having to hire engineers and spend $10,000 to $30,000 per structure to go back to the department and say, yes, this is a low hazard. Here, we've proved it to you. And REP really has never changed what we've done. So I think, I guess my main thrust for today is I would like to see this maybe be able to offer it an amendment into the department's bill. I would love to work with the department. I think they're positive to be in work together to maybe make something work here. And yeah, I appreciate the opportunity. Representative Chair, I stand for question.
All right, any questions for Mr. Grimm? See, now, again, thanks for coming in on a Friday afternoon. Appreciate it. Any other proponents wishing to testify? Seeing none, we go to our opponents. And up first, Josh McGinn from Kansas Department of Agriculture. Welcome to committee.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate having the enviable position of being here at 4:40 on a Friday afternoon. So thank you for that. I do want to try to be as quick as possible because in this, I believe, 8 or 9 page bill, the first 5 pages are about irrigation district voting procedures. Thankfully, we are not involved in that system or process, so we have no position on that. I believe there was an effort last year to do something on that as well. So we don't have any comment on that. There's also a dry detention road fill dam in section 2, subsection E on page 7. I believe that exactly mirrors what we are asking for in our bill. So we are also appreciative that that was included there. No issues there. And then finally, there is a civil penalty authority in section 3, subsection C on page 8. I just want to note there, this civil penalty authority goes up to $500. Ours would go up to $1,000. The biggest issue with civil penalty authority is that you want to make sure that the civil penalty is high enough that someone is not just going to violate the law, because it is less expensive to violate the law than to be in compliance with the law in the first place. So that said, we do appreciate that that was included, and we would like to work with the proponents on that. We went back and forth knowing that we were a neutral conferee on so much of this bill, but there is language in this bill that would create a significant exemption to current law above what we currently have in law, which is, as was previously discussed, the current exemption would allow dams that are up to 30 feet tall and contain up to 125 acre feet to be exempt. That is current law. As previous conferee mentioned, last year we did have a bill that would strike that language. 125 acre feet, if the entire Capitol grounds were covered in water, would cover the entire Capitol grounds in 6 feet of water. So that is still a decent sized amount of water that is currently exempt. I also do appreciate, though, the previous conferee mentioning that if these dams are made with engineers who are, practicing under their license and are spending a lot of money, they are not likely to design a dam that is likely to breach. And so we would like to work with them on that. But I think the only other major issue that hasn't been addressed, other than we do have a potential loss of federal funding when we don't regulate dams like they are regulated under national standards. But the only other thing I would like to mention is, and I'll just use a personal example, in the town I grew up in, a subdivision was built called the Highlands. And when we create exemptions for agriculture, we're not the only entity, ag producers are not the only entity that want to use that exemption. So we have to be very careful that any exemption provided cannot be taken advantage of by, say, a developer that wants to have a water feature near a subdivision, and then they do the water feature on ag land so that they can qualify for an exemption. So I just want to throw that out there, because the Highlands, close to where I grew up, could just become Highland Farms, and then a water feature could be built on the side of it. And so I'm not saying that that's necessarily going to happen, but we just have to be careful that when we do agricultural exemptions, that they are used for agriculture. And I do appreciate, as I said, a previous conferee did discuss how these are often used for irrigation and other purposes that are clearly agricultural. And we don't want to necessarily interfere with producers that are doing that and that are doing that the right way. So with that, I will stand for any questions, and thank you for your time.
All right, Josh, thanks. Any questions? Interesting. No, it's just interesting. I mean, I don't know where to even start, but thank you. All right, any questions? Saying none? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe it's the late hour. I don't know, Josh, but we'll see. Any other oral opponents? Seeing none. We do have written only opponents. Dana Hinderleiter, PE of Kansas Association of Professional Engineers, and Lori Sprague, Executive Director of Associate of State Dam Safety Officials. Anyone else as a neutral testimony? Seeing none, we will close the hearing on House Bill 2153. We want to remind you the FFA state officers will be here on Monday. We will have hearing on House Bill 2297. That is the domesticating of raccoons. And then we'll have action on bills previously heard. At this time, there'll be two of them, House Bill 2172 and House Bill 2254. One of those is it's the milk trust bill and the water task force, so those two bills. So if you have amendments, please get with Kyle. Anything else for the good of the cause? Please drive safe. Have a good weekend. We'll see you Monday, 3:30 for the next Ag Committee.